So welcome to our next episode in the Linux Crash Course. In this episode, we're going to cover file system basics and most importantly, how we can navigate the file system. So let's get at it. Okay, so just as a reminder, all of this content is in our GitHub repo, arcraven/linux-crash-course. We are doing this chapter 3 here, this system navigation. It contains a lot more than what we're going to cover in a single video. But we're going to cover this over the next couple of videos. Before we get to our terminal and start doing this, I want to just talk briefly about files in Linux. And the most important thing here is that in Linux, everything is considered a file. Everything. And so you're going to have things that are called regular files, and that's what we typically consider to be a file. Photos and text files and videos. But the Linux system itself considers directories to also be files. And then there's this other kind of file, which is called a special file. And these are usually used for I/O. Maybe they're socket files for inter-process communication and stuff like that. Everything's considered a file, even though when we will talk about things, we're going to say, hey, there's a directory, here's a file. But just remember, under the hood, Linux thinks everything is a file. All right, so let's get to our terminal window and start to type in some of these commands and see what we can learn here in this section. So the first thing I want to do is there's a command ls. Now ls is just kind of a list, and when I type in ls, it's going to show me everything that's in my current directory. You can see when I typed ls here, I got a readme, there's a green readme, there's purple dir1, dir2, dir3, and as you can probably guess, these are going to be directories. And then there's a green file called names. In our general context of what we would normally consider files, this is a file, readme. Names is a file, dir1, dir2, and dir3. Those are all directories. I'm going to see if I can just pump this up a little bigger too. Let's see if we can. That might be a little better. I'll see everything a little bit easier. As we go along, we're going to start accumulating commands. We're going to use these a number of times. If you feel like you need to write them down, go ahead and write them down, although they're in the notes, so you can always find them over here in the notes. You can see things like, here's ls and pwd and cd. We're going to talk about all of those. But for now, we're just going to carry on in our terminal here. The next thing I want to do is, I have this file called names. So we're going to use an application called cat. And we're going to cat these names. And what you're going to see is inside of names, this is what you have. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, and there's a name on each line. We can do the same thing with that README file. One of the things I'll point out here is I'm not typing all of this all the time. I'm typing cat, and I typed RE, and then I'm going to hit the tab key, and it's going to finish the rest for me. That prevents a lot of typing mistakes. When you see me going fast, it's not because I'm a great typer. It's because I'm hitting tab a lot. Every time I could hit tab, if I could make it say tab up there, you would see it hit tab a lot. I'm catting out the README file. And again, here's some text that's in the README file. Now, if I tried to cat out a directory, it says, oh, that's a directory. It doesn't know what to do with that. So cat only works on files. It'll tell you kind of what the content of the file is. One of the things that we're going to learn about Linux is composed of all of these little kind of standalone applications. And these standalone applications, they all operate on their own. They have a lot of options. They're very powerful. They can be chained together. And we just generally call them commands. So there's a cat command, there's an ls command, but they really are little applications. So for example, I can say which cat, and it'll tell me, hey, this cat command is in this directory. And so we're going to talk about these directory structures in a little bit, but I just wanted to let you know what we're really dealing with. These commands are each little bitty files that are executable. When you run them, they perform some function. All right, so another command, there's a wc command, and this stands for word count. So for example, I can run word count command on my names file, and let's see what it provides for us. So it's going to provide us 3 different numbers. Let's go ahead and do word count --help. Let's see what that says. And so when we do wc -help, you can see here what it does is it prints new line, word, and byte counts. New line is how many different lines there are. A word is how many different words there are, and byte is every single character is 1 byte. So it's really kind of how many characters there are. So these three numbers, this is 6 lines, 6 words, and 28 characters in the file called names. And so you can see that here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. And if we count all the characters up, I'm not going to do it, but I'm sure there's 28 there. And then there's a lot of options. So, for example, if I just wanted to count the words, I can use the -W option. I can run that same command, but instead of running it like that, I can add -W, and I would just get the number of words. So as an example, if you remember, we also have this README file. So I can use word count, give me the number of words in the tab README file. There's 21 words in there. If we were to cat out README tab, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 words. It's a command, a little function, an application that you can run, and it serves a purpose. So we're going to use the clear command to get rid of everything again. And I want to use the ls command again to list the different files and directories that I see in this particular directory. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to use a new command, cp. cp stands for copy. And what we're going to copy is we're going to copy the names file. And we're going to copy it. Let's say we have a reason that we're going to save this and we don't want it to get written over. So we're going to call it saved names. And so now if I ls, I'm going to see names and then my new copy called saved names. CP allows you to copy things. We're going to talk about copying from one directory to another directory and things like that in the future, but CP is copy. If I wanted to rename something, that's a MV command for move. When you want to rename it, maybe I made a mistake on the saved names. That's going to be, instead of saved names, maybe something like do not delete names or something like that. Move can be used to move things from one directory to another directory, but we can also just move it into the same directory, and that just turns it into like a rename command. So I want to hit enter here. Now if I ls, you're going to see I don't see saved names anymore, but now I have that new name, do not delete names. CP and MV, copy and move, and those copies are full copies. So, for example, if I cat out what's in this do not delete names, I'm going to get all of the names. It's a complete copy of that file. Now, if I have a file and I want to delete it, so let's say we're going to delete the do not delete now. So there's an RM for remove. These things have options, like you can -R, you can -R, you can -F. Sometimes if there's multiple options, you can combine them like a -RF, which is recursive, and then force. So we're not going to talk about those right now, but use the man command on the RM and you can just find out more options. I will show you a couple options in a little bit on RM, but we're going to RM and we can start that file, do not delete names, and I'm going to hit tab and it's going to fill out the rest for me, and then I can hit enter. And so it's going to remove that. Didn't ask me first. It's done. So if you're not sure, don't hit enter, because it's not going to say, are you sure? It's just going to delete it. Especially if you're going to go in and you're going to try to delete a directory that has a whole bunch of content in it. RM, if you do RM-R, which is recursive, delete everything in that directory. It's not going to ask you first. It's just going to do what you asked it to do. Be careful when you use RMs. The next command I want to show you is PWD, which is print working directory. And you're going to see it show me a couple of things. First of all, / is the root directory. It's as far back as you can go. And so we're going to talk about the root directory in a little bit, but I just want to kind of point that out here while we see it. Inside the root directory, there's a home directory. Inside of home directory, there's an Ubuntu directory. Inside of the Ubuntu directory, there's a files directory, and that's where we're at. So this is my working directory, my current working directory, and I'm looking at things relative to that. So when I say ls, it's relative to this working directory. So it's showing me everything in the files directory. ls is showing me this content, which is in this files directory. And it's important to realize, like, there's this hierarchy of directories and files. I don't really necessarily need to know where I'm at as long as I'm just doing relative stuff. So there's this concept of relative paths, and we're going to talk about that more in a second. And then there's a concept of absolute path, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. I want to look at another command called tree, and it says it's not found here. So it says I can run sudo apt install tree. So I'm going to copy and paste this. Yeah, kind of had a feeling we're going to have an issue. I'm going to type in a few commands. You can do these exactly the same. We'll talk about these in future projects. So what we need to do is, it doesn't really understand where the package list is. It's not really up to date. So we're going to do something from a different chapter, which you're going to have a lot more details on later on. But there's this package management, and we're going to come in here, and then there's this sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. Those are the two things that we're going to run right now, because we need to I want to get tree in here so we can visualize something. So sudo apt update, it's going to go out and it's going to go on the internet and pull in the latest packages. And again, we don't have to talk about this now, but I just kind of, while it's doing something, I might as well tell you, it's just grabbing these packages. And now we're going to type in sudo apt upgrade. It's going to upgrade the system. I'm just going to say yes for now and let it zip through everything. And now you should be able to type in sudo apt install tree, and it should install the tree for you. With all that said, let's type in tree here. And this is the reason why I wanted to install this. It gives you a good visual of what's in our current working directory, which is this files directory. There's the README file. Here's the names file. You can see directory 1 has a file in it called file 1. Directory 2 has a file in it called file 2. Directory 3 has two directories in it, directory 4 and directory 7. Directory 4 has directory 5 and directory 6 inside of that, and then there's file 6. So you can see how everything kind of chained together. These directories are nested inside of each other. If you were coming from like a Windows system, you have like a visual folder directory like Explorer, you can see all of that. This just gives you a visual way that you can see it here in Linux. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to start navigating this directory structure. In Windows, again, you would just go and you would double click that, and now you would be in that directory. But we don't have that. We have to use commands to navigate. Right now, we're in this home Ubuntu files directory, and I want to get into, say, directory number 1. So I want to get into there. I'm going to cd or change directory into directory, and again, I can hit tab. It'll try to fill out the rest, but it doesn't quite know because there's 1, 2, or 3. So if I hit tab again, tab a couple more times, you're going to see, oh, it says 1, 2, or 3. Which one do you want? I want 1. So cd dir1, and then enter. And so now it changed directory, and you can see it here right before my cursor. I'm under ~files/dir1. Now, ~/ let's talk about that for a moment. That is a special directory, and that's my home directory. And so when you see this, if I print out my current working directory, you can see it's files dir. All of this stuff here is ~/. So that's a shortcut for the Ubuntu user's home directory. So ~/ whatever user you're logged in as, that's your home directory. And I'm logged in as Ubuntu, so it's /home/Ubuntu is ~/. That's a shortcut for it. And we'll take a look at that again in a little bit. But now I'm inside of dir1. So if I ls, I should see this file 1. So let's see what we see in there. Just file 1. Now I'm inside that directory. There's no further I can go. So let's go back on out. If I want to go back a directory, there's a special syntax we use, and it's .. That's go back one directory. And now I'm back into the files directory. So you can see it's kind of updating as we go. If I want to go into, say, directory 3, I can cd into directory 3. And now I'm in directory 3. And if I want to get from here to directory 4, I can cd into directory 4. Now I've typed this, cd into directory 3, cd into directory 4. I don't necessarily have to do it like that. So if I go back one directory, go back to directory. So now I'm back in files. If I want to get to directory 4 from files, I can type in cd directory 3 / directory 4. And so what that's going to do is it's going to change into this directory first, and then it's going to change into that directory second. So it's kind of a shorthand notation of doing multiple directories. And really what this is, that's the command, and this is the relative path, or it can be an absolute path, but this is a relative path from where I'm at to where I want to go to. So if I hit enter, now I'm in directory 4. If I ls from directory 4, what I should see is just directory 5, and that's what I see here. And just like I chain directories here, if I want to go back 2 directories, I can chain the ... So back 1 directory, back 2 directories, and now I'm back in files. So using cd, change directory, then you can kind of navigate in as far as you want, and you can navigate right back on out. I want to show that tree again. A lot of the commands that we use, so for example, ls, that's list the current directory. Now, ls also takes a relative path. So I can say ls, and maybe I want to see what's in directory number 6, which should just have files. So I can say dir3 / dir4 / dir. Here I just hit tab. If I hit tab again, there's only one directory in there. And so I can ls list what's in that current directory, and I should just see file 6. So you see file 6 here. So at this point, you're starting to understand these relative directories. This is relative to my current working directory. Print working directory, it's relative to this directory. ls also takes an absolute path. So I can say something like, instead of this whole thing here, I can type this first /home, and I'm going to hit tab a lot, ebu tab, fi tab, and now dir3, dir4, tab, and now I have an absolute path. So the difference between these two lines, this is the relative path, and you can see relative because there's no slash or anything here that's saying that it's from the root directory, right? Here starts with a root directory. This is an absolute path all the way out to the same directory as I was before. So I'm expecting the same results, but instead of typing an relative path, I type in an absolute path there. And other commands have the same thing, right? So I can say cat dir3, dir4, and I can get all the way to file. So I'm going to cat out that file 6, and it just says, this is file 6. And I can do the same thing with an absolute path. And just hit tab a lot, and I can cat out file 6. Relative path, absolute path. When you need to use relative and when you need to use absolute, generally I would just go with saving the keystrokes. So I would type in these relative paths, especially if I'm just at the terminal and I'm just typing stuff. When you start to get into script files, it's even more important that you use the right kind of path. If it's relative to the file that I'm writing the script in, then I need to use a relative path. The difference between relative paths and absolute paths is important, and as you get going more and more, that'll become more clear. So when I print the working directory, we've talked about this. There's a slash directory there. So let's cd into slash, and now you can see that here is my current directory, it's slash. If I print it out, print working directory is just slash. I'm all the way back in the root directory. So because this is the root directory, everything in the whole system is contained within this directory. There's nothing else higher in the hierarchy that's above this. And that's why they call it the root directory. Now my ls command certainly works here. So I can see different kinds of files and directories. I get a new different color here. We'll talk about those in a little bit. But I see these bins. I see devs, I see sbins, TMPs, and the directories and the files that I see at this level, these are really the system level files and directories. So unless you really know what you're doing, this is not the area that you really want to mess around in with. You could end up breaking your operating system and it may not be recoverable. Caution you to not use your newly found powers and start to RM, remove, anything from here. On a side note, these directories are the standard directories, and if we go back to our notes, you can kind of see what the standard directory is, what kind of content or what kind of files are in each of those standard directories. So I'll let you just read those on your own. But let's go ahead back in here. As I talked to before, ls, this is just a command. It's actually an application that's written on the system somewhere. If I ever want to find out where these commands are, I can type in the word which, and it'll tell me where that command is. So here's a /user/bin/ls. Here is usr, that's the directory. It's in the root directory. If I want to see what else is in there, let's go /user/bin, and we can see all of the content in that directory. Now it's quite a bit. So I'm going to scroll all the way back up to where I issued that command at. This is all the different commands that are in there. So ls/user/bin, you're going to see there's apt commands. We saw that earlier. There's ping, there's bash, there's bc. So these are a lot of the different commands that we've issued so far. And then we're also going to talk about some of these other commands in the future, like ps. But you can see here's cat. There's Python in here. These are all different little applications. Chown, change owner. We're going to talk about that here in a pretty soon video. Clear, all of these rm. So here's where a lot of the commands are. cp. So I'm not going to scroll through them all, but ls is in here for sure too. The other thing I want to show real quick is we're going to cd and we're going to use this shortcut here that I talked about earlier. Tilde and slash. Tilde slash is a shortcut for typing in the user's home directory, your personal home directory. I'm logged in as Ubuntu. My home directory, when I type this in, that's where we're going to go to. So before we go there, let's go ahead and print our current working directory. We're in the root directory. And now I want to switch directory to tilde slash. And now you can see it has a tilde here. And I want to print this current working directory, and you can see that's /home/Ubuntu. For most Linux systems, the user's directory, their user home directory is in /home. That can be configured a little bit, but for most distros, you're going to find out that that's where the home directory is. In fact, if you were to ever ls/home, you would see a list of all the different users who have home directories. Right now, there's only one user that's on the system. It's called Ubuntu, and that's the Ubuntu's home directory. If I ls my directory right now, I see this files. That's where we were doing that work before. So that completes everything that I wanted to talk about navigation. So now you're able to navigate all the way back to the root directory. You can navigate to user's home directory. You can dive into different directories. You can list out, you can see things, you can cat out files. So we're in a good spot and we're ready for our next video. I'll see you next time.